Welcome to episode 130 of Wines to Find. Our wines today are a 2021 Lepiga Soave and a 2019, I believe.
It is. This is 2019.
Condrieu. And we are super excited. We're continuing in our series of If You Like This, Try This. Mm-hmm. So our topic that we're comparing to, we're trying to give you ideas of outside of the grape are Chardonnay. So if you like Chardonnay, these are a couple wines. And Chardonnay has a huge variety of flavors and taste profiles. So these wines aren't going to be anything similar to one another. Sort of they might be, but not. There'll be some differences, but they do lend themselves to a Chardonnay grape style wine.
Exactly. So we decided to take Chardonnay has such a wide range of styles. It can be all over the map. So we went two different ways. We said, okay, if you like a little bit butterier, fuller mouthfeel,
heavier, more texture,
try the Condrieu. If you like a lighter, crisper, more Chablis style, try this Soave from Italy.
And then we're going to go in and taste them both. So let's start right away with wine number one, like we always do.
Yep.
Which is going to be the Soave.
The Soave. And we'd love to show you the color of this.
And let's talk about that, because when I looked up the pronunciation, and I hope we're getting it right, but it does have that Soave. It's Soave, and I thought we would think about Rico Suave, and that's how we
always
remember.
Want to have.
I got to have an analogy.
You do. You always have to have somebody to compare it to. So here's the difference in the colors. We're hoping that you can see how much paler and lighter straw this first wine is. That it's also grown in a little bit. It's picked three different times in sweetness levels too. So it's picked at different times. So it's going to be that lighter, crisper look. This one here is that Condrieu. It's more rich, more intense. It has a lot more color.
Very much more golden. Mm-hmm. So we did color on both of them because we got this cool backdrop. And for a reminder for those folks who have been listening to the audio Wines to Find experience, we are now also a video Wines to Find experience. So you can hop over to Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook and see our faces and these wines that we're illustrating and listen as well as watch. So you can do that, or you can just continue with the earbuds. But anyway, wine number one again.
So we've got the wine number one. So we've got that light, very pale yellow. Let's go ahead and
smell. Mm-hmm. Very aromatic.
It is exceptionally aromatic. It comes right out of the glass, especially for a white wine. It's, I would say, medium intensity.
Mm-hmm. And what is the alcohol on this one?
I think this is this one 12.5? Let me verify.
I can definitely pick up some acid and a little hint of the alcohol in it, but I don't think it's very heavy on the alcohol.
It is a 2021, and the alcohol is 12.5.
Yeah. So I'm gonna guess what I'm picking up is the acid then. Okay. The burn in the nose. There is a slight burn in the nose, so it's gonna be a little bit more acidic,
and it's got a lot of peaches and pears. You can already smell. That's one thing that we noted in this grape, which is the. I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly.
Garganega.
Garganega. I actually have to look at the word to be able to say it. Yeah. Because Italian, basically, you can say almost the way it looks. Garganega.
Well, let me tell you about this. But before we even get to tasting, I have to talk about this because it's so confusing. I was thinking, both of these are the Soave is not called by the grape because they're both old world. We've got Italian and French wines here. So the Soave is 100% Garganega, and the Condrieu is 100% Viognier. So when we tell you if you like Chardonnay, try a Garganega grape, or a wine made from Garganega, or a wine made from Viognier, you'll walk into the store and you might not find wines that are named that, and then that's just going to blow your mind. But that's why you have to listen to us, one. But two, you have to kind of know that in those old world regions, you're not buying by the grape. You're buying by where it's grown. By the region. Yeah. All right, so back to the wine.
Yeah, let's go ahead. We've already smelled. We've already looked. Let's go ahead and taste and see what we find. Cheers.
Cheers.
Ooh, it's very light and crisp. I actually seem to taste a little bit more apple, maybe even pear.
Pear. I'm getting more pear than apple.
So that's kind of what first thing I got. I also got a lot of acidity on it, maybe some salinity. very crisp and light. I think this is, if you like an Albarino too, which if you like Chardonnays, then you would also an Albarino is one that you could go to. This, I think, is even more similar to an Albarino than even Chardonnay is.
It is. At the end of the Albarino, I tend to get the fruit, like it tends to lighten, and as it lightens on the tongue, the fruit really comes out. This is very consistent fruit throughout. It's a very
it's got a little bit of bitter on the back, a little bit of bite,
but it's consistent. The fruit flavor is the same throughout, but it's deep. It deepens, but it doesn't get brighter and lighter. But it's very good, and I like a dry Italian white wine, and this is one that a Soave would be one that I would always go to get because I do enjoy them. And when you are cooking with Italian whites, they want a dry white, and this is always one that's good to give a splash to the dish and a splash to yourself.
It adds that acidity to be able to brighten and liven up your dish. And I actually did bring a book.
We have a visual aid.
We do, because I love this book. I don't know if you can see it real well. It says What to Drink with What You Eat. And I always enjoy going and looking and seeing what they suggest to do. So the first rule of thumb I always think of whenever I'm pairing is go light dishes should have a light wine. So this is a very light-bodied wine, so I already know I'm going to be starting to think about those light dishes. So let's go ahead and look and see what this book suggests to pair with this Soave. Oh no, I lost my spot. Do you see it? Here it is. It's down on the bottom side. We have chicken, clams, antipasta, cheese, goat, crab, anything fish, fried or poached with light preparations, pasta with seafood, pesto, light pizzas, polenta, gorgonzola cheese, prosciutto, risotto, scallops,
I was thinking
seafood, shrimp. All those light, very light Mediterranean style dishes, because this Soave is right outside of, it's south of Verona. It's in the Veneto region, and it's right on the, let me see how you say this. I need to keep these glasses on even more. It's right outside of the mountains called the Le Senisi Mountains, which is right up in the Veneto region, which is closer to Venice. So
it is, but there's also a grape that they did DNA testing on that turns out it's the same grape, but it has a different name because they didn't know until they did the DNA testing. But it's grown in Sicily, so there's a Sicilian version of Soave as well that's going to be a little bit more rich.
But it's not going to be called
climate.
Soave.
It's not going to be called Soave because it's not grown in that area, that because of these Italian and French ways that they do.
Exactly.
So you have to kind of know. So it would be a Sicilian wine that you were looking for that's made from the grape that's derived from the Garganega.
But it's going to be a little bit richer and more full-bodied because the grape is going to ripen more due to the warmer temperatures.
The warmer climate there. Right. So I enjoy cooking with this. I enjoy this as a light aperitif. And I was thinking shrimp fettuccine. If you like shrimp fettuccine,
that would seafood and pasta.
Would be a good mixture of that.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we found out about this. One of the other things that I wanted to let you guys know is that this word here, the Tenuta, that it translates, I believe,
Tenuta,
Tenuta directly translates to grip or hold in Italian. So whenever you combine that with Santa Maria, it means grip or hold of the land.
Derived from the
land
okay,
of.
That makes sense.
Which then in English, I think, okay, that means estate. So you will see that Tenuta all over the place. Tenuta
on
something
bottles
on bottles and stuff.
Of the earth or of the land
essentially means the estate of. So that gives you an idea, because it's not a producer. It's just the way they estate of, chateau. It's just another term that you'll see on Italian bottles. And then also this region or this appellation, the Soave. It is part of a layered of regions. So you have Veneto region, and then this is another layer within it. So you have to think of Italian countryside as layers of appellations. So then you can have different parts, another one that's layered over top of it, which I never anticipated. I always thought they were kind of always just individual and butted up against each other, but they aren't. They can actually overlap.
Like a growing region within a growing region within a growing region.
Right. Well, they could overlap, so it may be part of a different one too.
Well, that's when we get to wine number 2, we'll talk about that too,
Okay,
because that's
great.
similar. But before we move on to wine number 2, speaking of that, let's talk about what we talked before we taped. We talked about how 2 things. The Soave and the Chianti were the first to receive the DOC label in Italy. So they're the first wines that when they started doing what they call their control, these were the first 2 wines that received designations.
Which was the DOC and DOCG. Those were the first 2 appellations or designations, that requirements. The DOC is not quite as strict. DOCG is more strict. Than the IGT is a little bit looser. And as
in Italy, that's their classification system.
Correct. And what I found out when I was doing some research about this Soave grape is it kind of went through the same overproduction back in the 70s. It was produced so much and it was imported into the United States. It was very, very popular for an Italian white grape. And
in fact, it made up like 70% at one point of the sales. It was the most popular white wine coming from Italy.
It was hugely popular. So unfortunately, when that happened, similar to what Chardonnay did, and it had gone through, it went through that bulk wine phase. People started wanting it, so then the prices went up. But then it started getting a bad rap as far as being bulk produced, mass produced. So now what's happening is underneath this Soave region, this area, you can get the DOCG, the DOC, and then the IGT. Some of the people that are producing, that are really wanting to get back to the roots of the good quality that Soave was known for, they want a lower percentage alcohol, like the 12.5, like this one is. So what they've decided to do is they decided to bump it down to the IGT status that does not require the 13.5. So sometimes whenever you see that, actually this one here is actually the DOC, not an IGT, but the DOCG requires 13.5%. So that just tells you that there's reasons for why people pull out of those classifications, because they want to be able to produce and be on their own. So I took that as they're becoming more American. They're really starting to try new and different things to be able to produce the best kind of wine they can.
And we're learning that in those old world regions where that's so strict. And essentially, in order to get this designation, there's parameters for growing, for aging, for everything. And if you want to play around, then you might lose that designation. And so that means a lot to want to step out and to try more. But
try a little, just something different.
Right. But as the world gets smaller, they need to be competitive, and craft everything is so popular right now that in order to change that 100-year-old tradition, maybe they have a little bit of struggle with it, but they are wanting to pull out flavors and different profiles and different things. So taking a step down, even just as much as saying, well, I don't want it to have as much alcohol because that's where we're trending as a industry, then what happens is you have to give up maybe the DOCG that says, no, it has to be this % alcohol in order to have my label.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going into all of that.
Well, to me, it means that I think this may be an up and coming wine, whereas before it kind of went by the wayside, that Pinot Grigio took over so much of the market share, that I think this may be one of those that if people start looking around, they're going to start seeing the quality. So we think this is one of those that you might want to keep an eye out in your local store.
Revisit. If it was one, like for me, I really enjoyed it back 10, 15 years ago. And now, I'm like, oh yeah, I really did like that. And going back to it and remembering what I like about it, I think that there's going to be a resurgence. And just the same with Chenin Blanc with you. I think that the tastes have gone lighter and brighter. And so those wines that have that flavor profile you're going to find them on the shelf here soon.
Yeah. Well, they're already there. You just got to hunt a little.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about wine number 2.
Ooh,
this one is a treat. So this first one, back up, was $16.99. So that was a little bit on the lower value end, and it packs a good punch.
Just a lower price point. I wouldn't say lower value.
Right. That would be a better way to put it. This next one, first of all, going back to the premise, was if you like Chardonnay, these are wines to try. Mm-hmm. Wines to find, in fact. But if you like a heavier Chardonnay,
more mouthfeel,
because Chardonnay, like we said at the beginning, has a broad spectrum of flavor profiles and tastes,
because it can be grown anywhere in the world.
And it's such a wide variety of makers and style that you kind of have to know what you like about Chardonnay. And or for me, I like certain Chardonnays for certain things. If I'm going for a lighter, brighter, I would go with this Soave. If it's fall, if it's getting a little cooler, but I still want a white wine and I wanted something a little heavier, I'm going to go to a heavier version of it, which is what this Condrieu is going to be. And that would be a Viognier grape, and that's what we wanted to do. Is we wanted to show you a grape that is similar to Chardonnay, that maybe you want to get out there outside the box of Chardonnay and try something different. So you might would want to look for a Viognier. Well, Viognier is not heavily produced. California, some New Zealand, some Australia, maybe, and then in France is where it's mostly grown. And in France, it's grown in the Rhone Valley mostly. And in the Rhone Valley, this is where you get those layers that Sandy was talking about. Within the Rhone Valley, there's sections of it that where Viognier is grown, and the area where 100% Viognier is grown that has a label of Condrieu, which is what this wine is very elite.
See that?
This wine is not. This is not your value wine. This is going to be your special treat wine, because they only have like 200 hectares in this area that they grow the wine. It's all mostly Viognier, and when Viognier is kind of one of those finicky grapes too. It's grown on a terrace in very rocky soil. They can't use machines. It's all hand harvested, hand picked. So it is very labor intensive. So that price tag that's on this is well earned. But it is a very big, bold. When you go with Chardonnay, the Chardonnays that get described as buttery, and it's not because they taste like butter. No, they did get that a little bit when
it was vanilla and all that.
And then when they were going for the heavy oak. But what you're going for when it's described as buttery is more of the mouthfeel. And if you roll this, you can see this is a very thick in the glass. It swishes to the glass very well. And look at how golden that is. It is a very
You can't tell that Michelle likes this, can you?
I'm just
She's
already
already
waxing
about
To be fair,
it.
we haven't tried it. And this has been on our wish list. So we've tried Viogniers. We've tried California
Well, I
Viogniers.
guess since you like Viogniers.
Right. And Sandy said about a year and a half ago, she's like, well, we got to try Condrieu. And I was like, that's really expensive. That's going to have to be a treat one. So then when we talked about this, if you like this, try this. I thought this is the time to try it. So we actually have never had a 100% labeled Condrieu.
No, so this is going to be a treat.
Well,
so let's go ahead, and we've already looked at it. Let's smell it.
Okay.
Oh, it's not as intense as the other.
It's very aromatic, though.
It's low intensity. It's floral. As soon as I smell it, I smell floral.
I got it really not. I got it.
You got it right up your nose?
I did. I tried to pour it. Oh, it is thick, though. I can feel it on my hands. It's going to be tropical. There's going to be more tropical. It's got some citrus, but I can also smell that pear and melon underlying.
Definitely. All right, I'm going to go ahead and taste. Ooh. Oh, it definitely does have that melon taste. Peachy, very peachy. More peachy than I anticipated. I was thinking more pear. Mm-hmm. Lots of peach and nectarine. Very ripe peach, too. Not one that's sitting there hard. Which, Michelle, you said you found out some information that you really wanted to talk about whenever you were talking about flavor profiles and about peaches or stone fruits.
Stone fruit. I wanted to point out that a lot of times when you're looking at what something might taste like when they're describing why they wax poetic, but one of the common descriptors for a Viognier and a lot of white wines is stone fruit. And if you don't know what stone fruit are, you're like, I don't know what that means. So we're going to tell you. A stone fruit is one that has a large pit. And the pit actually is what contains the seeds. Mm-hmm. And those stone fruits that have those are known to be peaches, nectarines, like you said, plums. They're the fruits that you really have to cut around to get that big fat thing in the middle, that's hard out.
That's the stone.
Mm-hmm. And so those tend to be descriptors for a lot of Chardonnays, a lot of Sauvignon Blanc. Sometimes you get it for mostly white wines. You don't get a lot of stone fruit ever for a red wine.
No, but if you know what, I have to interrupt. I still taste that wine in my mouth.
I do.
It has an exceptionally long finish. I kind of swirled it in my mouth, and I still can taste it up under my rim of my teeth here, and it's still got a little bit of tinkle. That's a long time.
That is. And what I like about it is one thing that I always want to try to do is get a good representation. And if you wanted to have a good representation of Viognier, this is it, because you know it's 100% Viognier. And that's why I had it on my wish list to try a Condrieu. And I do feel like it's a great representation of the mouthfeel, but also that tropical. I don't even know how to describe it because it doesn't really, that melony, the mixture of melon, peach, and tropics, you only get in a Viognier. And it does linger in your mouth.
It definitely does.
Like those fruits do. So yeah. I enjoy it a lot. So what did we learn about the area?
Let me see. Yeah, the area. It's definitely, even particularly about this producer, one thing that I noticed is he has been organic since 2004. He got his designation in 2019. And one of the things that I saw when I was researching his site is that his reds, he ferments in fiberglass tanks.
Oh, that's interesting.
I know. Not so. I was thinking we need to check him out. The reds, because I was like, ooh. And his name is and he's I forget his name. Oh my gosh.
Aurélien Chatagnier.
Yes. So he started his own domain. He was not from a winemaking family, which is very different in France.
Very uncommon.
And very uncommon. And he just grew up wanting to do it. Then he went and worked for a vineyard, and then he opened his own domain
in one of the most elite wine growing regions in the world. That's
so
pretty impressive.
He ends up doing this fiberglass tank, which maybe other people have before. I just have never heard of it. So I was like, okay, that's just something on my radar that we need to start looking for. This wine is in 10% new oak. So it's got a little bit, but not much. So that way, if you like that oily mouthfeel, this is one of those that would be good for you to try. It's also made with natural yeast, and it has gone through malolactic fermentation within barrel.
And that's where you're going to get that texture and feel. Another thing is they aren't very high acidic. So if you like a Chardonnay, but you're on the lighter acid side of Chardonnay, like that's the distinction between these two wines. Is
this one's zippy and racy and crisp?
It's popping in the glass.
This one here has got a lot of mouth,
smooth and mellow, and it just lingers in your mouth. So you have to really know what about Chardonnay you like, and/or when you like the different Chardonnays.
I think I even got some pineapple on that one.
That's more
pear.
That's tropical. It's very tropical.
Very tropical. I was going to give you some suggestions as far as what to try with this Condrieu. Where is it?
Well, while you're looking for that, I was going to say that this is in the Rhone Valley. It's grown in the Rhone Valley. It's grown in the very tip top part of the Rhone Valley. Okay. And again, like we said, in the Rhone has some highly recognizable Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Condrieu. Those are some of the higher end wines. So they're treats. They're not, hey, I'm going to go get a Condrieu on a Tuesday night. Probably not going to do that.
All right. So since these are usually Condrieux are fruity and floral, they suggest apricots, chicken, crab, curries. So I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to try it with the curry. That would be, I bet that would be fabulous.
That would be, I've got some good curry powder. That might be what we have a little bit later.
Then we have foie gras, lobster. I'd imagine lobster would be fabulous. Mango, monkfish, pork, ossobuco, salmon, rice and risotto. I thought all of those they sound very similar to what you would have with this, except it's going to be that heavier mouthfeel and those flavors such as the stone fruits that would go with it. Particularly that curry, I think would be really nice. Really nice with it.
Well, and they're very rich flavors.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, they're much heavier and flavor intense.
All right. So the other thing that we learned about this area, again, we described the terroir being on it's terraced, and the soil itself is a mixture. There's a mixture of three different. It's chalk, flint, and mica, or mica, M-I-C-A. And
I think it's called mica. Whenever I've had geology classes, they call it mica.
They do in America. In France, it would be mica.
Right.
So, and that mixture is actually known in France as arzel. I found that very interesting. Is that they have their own little kind of name for those three together, and so it does add a little bit of chalky, flinty minerality to it as well, but not as much as in a Sauvignon Blanc or that bright, or even as much as even in this other, the Garganega is a little bit more mineral than this.
Well, I also read that they pick from two different sides of the mountain. They pick from the southern side and from the eastern side, so that way you get little different ripening effect as you would. Same thing whenever I said that these were picked at different ripeness levels. This would basically do the same thing with a south exposure versus an eastern exposure.
So there's just a lot going on in that glass of wine.
There is a lot going on.
All right. Well, we hope that you did learn a little bit and enjoyed tasting some wines like this. Let's talk about how much we enjoyed tasting
All
these
right,
wines.
let's go straight to our ratings. For wine number 1, I have to taste again.
I have to go back. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's going to be different now that we've had that other. So
I will give this a 4. I think it's a great value at $16.99. I can see myself for sure popping that open with something nice and light and crisp, and it would add that extra zing to it. Definitely a 4.
that's a 4 for me as well. I love to make lasagna, and I always want to dry Italian when I do the sausage to brown the sausage, and this would be high on my list.
So you could
to
give
go.
a little splash and then drink the rest yourself?
Yeah. Mostly for me. Yeah. Yeah. All right. And then this one, the Condrieu. I can't say a 5. I just don't know how often I would spend $63. It's the $64 on this, which is why I don't know that I can give it a 5. I enjoy it enough that I could give it a 5, but I just don't know how often it would be a 5 over time. So I'm going to go 4.5 on this because I love it. It is very good. It's exactly what I wanted it to be, which is a great representation of the Viognier grape. That heavy, that mouthfeel, the complexity of flavor with the tropic added in. This is a perfect example of that. I'm just going to give it a 5. I'm just going to go there. I just talked myself into it.
Well,
how about you?
What I think that I noticed is that I enjoy it even a little bit more than the California Viogniers that I have had, because it just seems, I'm sitting up in my chair because it seems like lighter and a little bit more lifted, even though it has that smooth, buttery texture and all those flavors. It seems to bring an extra little something to the table. I also would give this a 5 if I could purchase it more often.
Yeah, I'm glad we Coravend it so that we can have Scott share it as well. I hope he would enjoy it.
I think my husband, this is right up. If you have a red wine lover who's like, some white wines I'm just not so sure of, this would also be a great wine at doing it the French way, serving your white wines at the end. This could actually hold up at the end of the meal.
This would hold up to the reds that you had prior to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we did want to mention Sandy's wearing blue. I'm wearing red, and our backdrop today is
blue.
Woo! Because we are taping on the 4th of July. We hope you had a great 4th of July weekend. If you happen to be in France, Bastille Day is coming up. We hope you have a great Bastille Day. And otherwise, we just hope you're having a great summer and you're enjoying our tour of wines we do have. We're going to continue on this theme of if you like this, try that. And next up will be, do we know what next up is?
I think it's Riesling.
If you like Riesling, try this. So there you go. We'll join us next time on Wines to find out. Well, join us next time to find out which one to try. And Sandy?
Yeah, well, follow us on Instagram, and we will see you next time on
Wines to Find.